Thanks, EJ. We're looking at the waiver wire once again for week 15 of the fantasy hockey season. So, Nick, the big conversation on today's episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice was whether Ville Husso, the 1B goaltender for the St. Louis Blues, is the real deal. What are you seeing in this player other than the fact that he leads the NHL in even strength save percentage, minimum 10 games this season?
Yeah, Petey, we got a good old goaltending controversy brewing in St. Louis. There's no doubt about that. You look at Ville Husso, 26 years of age. He's a pending UFA, and he's on fire. Since the beginning of 2022, 5-0-0, 1.20, 963 save percentage. You can't ask for much more for the St. Louis Blues, can you?
I mean, you could ask more out of Jordan Binnington, that's for sure. Ever since that 2019 Stanley Cup run, he has a 910 save percentage, which is, I would say, a little bit below average. So he has room for improvement. But meanwhile, it's been either Charlie Lindgren this year or Ville Husso standing out, at least from a fantasy streaming standpoint. Now, for Colorado, one of the other deepest teams in the NHL this season, Val Nichushkin's really standing out to me. And what he's doing from a goal-scoring standpoint when he's healthy this year, he's tied for second on the Avalanche in goals per game behind Mikko Rantanen, Nick.
Yeah, anytime Colorado, Pete, plays a 4-game week, you got to be all over them. This week is no different. You look at the line deployment as well with Nazem Kadri and Andrei Burakovsky. He's on PP2 as well. So no doubt, I think you have to look to the wire. You have to look at Nichushkin and look at the body of work and say, yeah, I'm picking this guy up because he's been money in the bank this season. It seems like a far cry, far memory from those years in Dallas, eh?
He's come a long way in his career for sure, and he's cemented himself in the top 6 for one of the best teams in the league. 12 players tied for the most in NHL.com's most recent top 200 rankings. One of them is Nichushkin. He's definitely trending up this week in fantasy. And then from one of the better teams to one of the worst teams, I think we've seen some hidden value from that Buffalo Sabres top line. It's Alex Tuch. It's Tage Thompson, who's having a breakout year. And then Jeff Skinner, who a lot of people have been harsh on because he makes so much money, but he's delivering here in a bounce-back season.
Bottom line, lots of untapped value right now, I would say, in Buffalo. 7 goals in the past 10 games for Jeff Skinner, and he's playing with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch. I'm glad you brought up the name Tuch as well. I still am bewildered how this guy is under 30% utilized and owned in standard leagues right now. He is absolute money in the bank. He's been a beast with Buffalo, as we projected. And yeah, we got to be all over Jeff Skinner. Any attachment to that, Pete, we got to be in love with. So let's get some fan questions now. We talked about Ville Husso. Ville Husso or Pavel Francouz? What say you, Pete Jensen?
Well, last week we had Francouz in our top 25 goalie rankings. We didn't have Husso in there quite yet. I would still side with Francouz because I think the Avalanche give their goaltenders a higher ceiling with all that goal support leading the league in goals per game. And Francouz, you look back at the 2019-20 season, when this guy's healthy, I mean, he's outstanding. He's got a .923 save percentage in 42 NHL games. He was 21-7-4 in that 19-20 season. And so far this year, I mean, the Avalanche's team save percentage doesn't look very good at .902, but remember all those depth goalies they were rolling out earlier in the year. It's actually .914 if you do just Kemper, who's the clear starter, and Pavel Francouz. And, of course, Darcy Kemper, Nick, has a little bit of an injury history, so I'm siding with Pavel Francouz.
Yeah, that goes without saying, and Francouz will start tonight for the Colorado Avalanche, so keep that in mind. I'm going Ville. I got to go with my boy Ville Husso, but you can't go wrong with either file. The second fan question pertains, Pete, to injuries on the back end and how do you rectify and how do you look at some stopgap options? Certainly there's a plethora of guys we're looking at right now when it comes to defensemen, right?
Yeah, there are some stopgaps, some streamers, and then there are some guys with some hidden value and that have staying power for sure, like Jared Spurgeon for me. He came back over the weekend, had 2 power play assists. He's playing big minutes for the Minnesota Wild on their first power play with Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Zuccarello, a rookie you should pick up, Matt Boldy. Those are the guys on PP1 for Minnesota. That's another team that's in, I think, the top 5 in terms of fantasy depth this season at large. And then I would also keep an eye on Alec Martinez, who could be coming back from injury very soon. But I know there's some other guys option as well.
Yeah, pretty much what we're telling you is anybody who's hot, take a flyer. I think automatically you got to look at Pittsburgh, a 4-game week as well for them. Brian Dumoulin and Mike Matheson, Pete, among others.
Yeah, for sure. And Brady Shea for the Carolina Hurricanes is taking on a much bigger offensive role. You know, Tony D is the guy that's getting all the fanfare this year with his point production near a point per game. But Brady Shea playing on their second pair, 10 points plus 7, 29 shots over his past 10 games. We didn't see anything like this fantasy-wise from this player in his days with the blue shirts at the Garden. So I'm impressed with the career progression of Brady Shea, and I think that he is worth your while if you're in a deeper league.
Another guy is Jacob Slavin as well. I think with all these upper echelon teams, there's value to be found, certainly. And I think, Pete, that's the biggest advice to close here is that just find a guy who's hot and roll on to the next one he's not, because it's so hard to find production long-term when it comes to defensemen in fantasy hockey.
And I mentioned Alec Martinez, the pace that this guy was on. He wasn't even on power play 1 last year. He was on pace for 50 points. So him coming back from injury for one of the best teams in the league. I stashed Martinez in both of my Yahoo fantasy leagues over the weekend. Back to you, EJ.
All right. I like it when guys get stashed.